Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars, and welcome to another of my top 10 lists. And if you have been following the channel over the last few weeks, you will know that I've been doing some classic film reviews on 1980s comedies, and as usual I always finish it off with a top 10 list. So this is going to be a top 10 list focusing on my favourite 1980s comedies. And oh my god, what a really difficult list this has been to compile and put together. Probably easily my hardest top 10 list to do so far, because there's just so many great 80s comedies. I've probably missed a load off this list that I like, that I just forgot about. I did do quite a bit of research looking into this, but it was a really hard list to do, to narrow it down. So there are quite a few honourable mentions this time, only because I don't want you guys to put in some things in the comments, say, oh my god, where is this film, where is that film? You're probably going to still do that anyway, because I've probably missed so many off. But please remember guys, this is just my top 10 list of my favourite 1980s comedies. Everybody's top 10 lists are subjective, but I would love to hear in the comments what your favourite top 10 80s comedies are. I would imagine there'll be some of them on my list that will make yours, because they're just such great films and so funny. So without further ado, we shall move on to some honourable mentions. Right, so as mentioned, there's quite a few honourable mentions, and there's more than you can see on screen right now. But we shall start with these three brilliant comedies from the 1980s. We shall start with Major League, one of my favourite sporting films, and one of the very first film reviews I did on this channel, and I think I might be right in thinking it was the very first classic film review I ever did on this channel. So go and check that out, one of the first reviews I ever did. Really love Major League, very funny film. Tom Hanks, big, the film that I think everybody realised, whoa, this guy is a superstar. A great 80s comedy for sure, and would easily make many people's top 10 list. It just missed out on mine. And The Great Outdoors, brilliant John Candy, Dan Aykroyd film that is hilarious to watch. Doesn't get enough credit really, but it's a fantastically fun film, and definitely one I would highly recommend. So the next honourable mentions are Fletch, the Chevy Chase, brilliant Fletch film. I think when I did my top 10 Chevy Chase films, this was really high up on the list. I just absolutely love it. It's a great Chevy Chase film, and he proved what a leading actor he was in that. I just think in regards to pure comedies, there are others that he's done better than Fletch in regards to pure comedy. Ruthless People, nobody talks really about this film. Absolutely hilarious 80s comedy, gross out humour in it. It's very funny, and one I strongly recommend if you've never seen Ruthless People. And of course, Stir Crazy, the absolute classic Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor film from the 1980s, where they get sent to prison. It shows why these two guys worked so well together and were absolute comedy geniuses. Very funny film. And I've just got one more honourable mention, and that is The Three Amigos. I didn't want to fill my top 10 list just full of the same actors, and I could have put a load of Chevy Chase films in there, a load of Steve Martin films in there, a load of Eddie Murphy films in there, but I tried to filter it out to have maybe one or two only in the top 10 list, but this just missed out. Really funny film. So let's get on to the proper list. Coming in at number 10, Porky's, a film that I have recently or previously done a classic film review on, so you'll be able to find that on the channel. Just look at the box office numbers for that, for a film released in 1982, a comedy film no less. Huge box office numbers, and it actually beats many of the films on this list, so it shows what a big hit this was in the day. It spawned 2 sequels, inspired the American Pie films. Very influential comedy film. Number 9, Police Academy. You may well scoff at all the sequels. I think the sequels are pretty good up to the 3rd one, arguably the 4th one, and then they just went absolutely stupid. I completely agree. But the first Police Academy film was absolutely brilliant, and it still stands up. It's still very funny. I have again previously done a classic film review for this on the channel. And definitely worth watching, and a lot of people just focus on the sequels, but it's still a very good film, this. Number 8, Beetlejuice, the Tim Burton classic comedy that stars Michael Keaton, Gina Davis and Adam Baldwin. I went to the cinema to see this when my parents were on holiday at the time. I just didn't want to see it at all. It sounded rubbish I would have been about, 14 or something at the time. It sounded rubbish, but I absolutely loved it. Michael Keaton was class. They keep talking about a sequel. Please give it us. Number 7, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, my personal favourite Steve Martin film. Another John Candy film. Sadly missed John Candy. He was such a great comedy actor, and this film is not only hilarious, John Hughes film, but it's got a real heart at the centre of it, this film, this relationship between these two guys. So it's a beautifully made film, but at the very core it's absolutely hilarious too. Number 6, we have Trading Places, the Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd comedy, the rags to riches tale. Eddie Murphy plays a homeless guy that ends up trading places with Dan Aykroyd, who is the rich snob. Really fun concept. This is the film that turned Eddie Murphy into an absolute star, that catapulted him into superstardom in the 80s. Brilliant film, and the film that made me fall in love with Jamie Lee Curtis as a young man. Number 5, Coming to America. How could you not have this on a top 10 favourite 1980s comedies? Arguably Eddie Murphy's best comedy ever, and I do think there's a debate to be had with that here, but it was an absolute smash hit, this film. They've been talking about a sequel for a while. I would be very interested to see that, if they can give us something different, if they're just not going to rinse and repeat. I'm not interested in that. Hilarious film this. Very talented Eddie Murphy was. And is. Another film I've done classic film review on leading up to this top 10 list, National Lampoon's Vacation. It's a classic Chevy Chase comedy. I think Chevy Chase's best pure comedy film, this. I enjoy all the sequels to a certain degree, even the Vegas Vacation one, that not a lot of people care for. There is no denying that this was a 1980s classic comedy. Number 3, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Again, I've just done a classic film review for this, leading up to this top 10 list. Impossibly cool film. Pop culture, it's developed so much pop culture and pop references, and Matthew Broderick's arguably his greatest film, still stands up today. Hugely fun to watch, and yeah, why would it not be so high on the list? It's brilliant. Number 2, this was very nearly my number 1, because I have such fond memories of this film. It is a beautiful film in regards to the core and the love story that it's trying to tell, but Dudley Moore gives one of the best comedy on-screen performances I have ever seen. I'm not sure I've ever really seen it matched for an actor of his stature, who was quite unknown at the time. To be so brave in this role was brilliant. Absolutely love this film. And number 1 for me, it has to be Ghostbusters. You could argue that this kind of slips into a few genres, but at the very core of it, it's a comedy film starring established comedy actors. Ivan Reitman here created an absolute classic. They've never ever managed to capture the magic of the first one. The second Ghostbusters is okay. We won't talk about the reboot they did. We all know there's a new one coming next year, which I'm desperate for it to be good. I'm really hopeful it is. But for me, Ghostbusters has to be the number 1 comedy of the 80s. I remember going back to see this repeatedly at the cinema when it came out. Hugely fun film to watch. Has to be the winner. So there you go, guys. That's my top 10 1980s comedies, and I can't tell you, really, it really was a really difficult list to put together. I almost regretted saying I was going to do it or started doing it, because it was very tough to do. But I think there's no denying there's some absolutely classic 80s comedies in that list. What order you would put them in is up to you, and I'm sure I have missed some off, so please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are and what the favourite 1980s comedies are. So yeah, guys, I think next time I might focus on the controversial Steven Seagal and do my top 10 favourite Steven Seagal films. starting with obviously some classic film reviews of his movies first, and then I'll move on to my top 10 list. So that's going to be an interesting one for sure. I'm not sure I can find top 10 favourite films of Steven Seagal, but I shall give it a go. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and of course I shall see you next time on Screen Stars.